Magee. See if we can get things all squared away. You don't need to see my water over here. And we're doing part 3 now, which is chapters 33 and 34 for today. January of that year was too cold and dry for snow. It was a month of frozen hardness of ice. Been there. Maniac drifted from hour to hour, day to day, alone with his memories, a stunned and solitary wanderer. He ate only to keep from starving, warmed his body only enough to keep it from freezing to death, ran only because there was no reason to stop. Even if the superintendent had allowed it, he could not have brought himself to stay at the band shell. He returned only long enough to pick up a few things: a blanket, some non-perishable food, the glove, and as many books as he could squeeze in the old back satchel that had hauled Grayson's belongings around the minor leagues. Before he left for good, he got some paint and angrily brushed over the 101 on the door. During the days he ran, usually a slow jog, but sometimes he would suddenly sprint, furious 10, 20-second bursts, as though trying to leave himself behind. Sometimes he walked. He crossed and recrossed the river. He wandered in all directions through all the surrounding communities and townships: Bridgeport, Conskunkin, East Norriton, West Norriton, Jeffersonville, Plymouth, Worcester. Whenever he crossed the bridge over the Schuylkill, he turned his eyes so as not to see the nearby P&W trestle. Even so, in the mind's eye, he saw the red and yellow trolley careening from the high track, plunging to the water, killing his parents over and over again. Wow, maybe that's what happened. After a while, he stopped crossing the bridge. Other than that, he went wherever there was room to go forward, along roads and alleys and railroad tracks, across fields and cemeteries and golf courses. From high above, a tracing of his routes would have looked as hopelessly tangled as cow's knot. By nightfall, he was back in Two Mills. He would retrieve the satchel from wherever he had stashed it and find a place to endure the night. A few times he revisited the buffalo pen, when he covered himself with a second blanket of straw. Other times, his night quarters might be in an abandoned car or an empty garage, a baseball stairwell. When his original supply of food ran out, he fed himself at the zoo or at the soup kitchen down at the Salvation Army. He did odd jobs for housewives, ran errands for shopkeepers. He would not beg. One day, he found himself among monuments and cannon and rolling hills. He was in Valley Forge. Here, the Continental Army had suffered through a winter of their own, and the vast, stark, frozen desolation itself seemed a more proper monument than statues in stone. The only buildings here were tiny log and mortar cabins, replicas of the Army shelters. Maniac could feel the ache swelling outward from his breast and filling the enormous, bounding spaces. He returned to town for the satchel and put himself up in one of the cabins. It was scarcely bigger than a large doghouse. The floor was dirt. There was a doorway, but no door. Several saltines fell from the blanket. He threw them outside, let the birds have them. He wrapped himself in the blanket and lay down. He lay there all night and all next day. Dreams pursued memories, courted and danced, and coupled with them and became one. And the gaunt, beseeching phantoms that called to them had the rag-wrapped feet of Washington's regulars, and the faces of his mother and father, and Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan, and the Beals and Earl Grayson. In that bedeviled army that would no more have recruits, no one else would orphan him. The second evening came and went. Maniac never stirred, knowing it would not be fast or easy, and wanting, deserving nothing less. Grimly, patiently, he waited for death. Chapter 34. It was during the second night in the cabin that he heard the little voices. There were not soldier voices. "I'm going in this one." "No, not that one. That one's bigger." "I'm tired. I'm stopping." "You stupid meatball, it's right there. Another 2 seconds." "I'm staying." "Great, you beef jerky. Stay. I'm going to go to that one." "Good night." Silence then. "Hold on, I'm coming." This was all. The ghostly soldiers returned, their haunted eyes, seeking warmth, food, life. There was no morning, only daylight in the doorway. He pushed himself up, dragged himself outside into the blinding light. The saltines lay in the brown, frozen grass. The next cabin was nearby. January slipped an icy finger under his collar and down his back. He pulled the blanket tighter about himself. It was too late. The finger had touched the last warm coal in his hearth, and his body, fanning the embers, shook itself violently. He walked into the next cabin, looked inside, and saw a body huddled in the corner. An eye opened, staring at him. Then, in succession, 3 more eyes opened. The body divided and became 2. 2 little boys. "Get a load of this, Meatball," said the one with the front tooth missing. "He walks around with a blanket on." "Hey, Meatball, why didn't you bring your mattress along, too? And your pillow, too," screeched the other. Then Missing Tooth whipped off his woolen cap and smacked Screecher in the face. Screecher retaliated, and Maniac had stepped back while a 2-kid tornado swirled around the cabin. When they finished, they rolled onto their backs, shook their legs at the ceiling, and laughed as long as they had fought. The volume coming from Screecher was incredible, as though a microphone was embedded in his throat. Finally, Missing Tooth rediscovered the stranger standing in the doorway. "Hey, Meatball, you running away too?" "No, not really," Maniac replied. "Well, we are," went Screecher. "Where are you going?" Maniac asked. The answer came from both. "Mexico!" Maniac bit back a grin. When they stood, he saw they couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall or 8 years old. "Well," he said, "it's good and warm down there, but it's pretty far, you know." "Yeah, we know," growled Missing Tooth. "You think we're meatballs like you?" He grabbed a supermarket bag in the corner and opened it. "Look!" It was filled with candy, cupcakes, pies, even a pack of butterscotch crimpets. Maniac's stomach rasped against itself. He remembered how thirsty he was. "Where'd you get all this?" "We stole it," Reacher blurted. The other smacked him in the cap. "Shut up, Piper, you stupid sausage. You don't go telling people you stole stuff." Piper returned the cap slap. "You shut up, Russell. I didn't tell him where we stole it." This time, the fight was over in less than a minute. But it started up again when Maniac asked where they were from, and Piper said 2 mills. And Russell said, "Shut up, he might be a cop," and bopped him good. When they settled down, they stared at him wearily. Piper snickered. "He ain't no cop. He's a kid." "Yeah?" sneered Russell. "That's how much you know. They got cops that look like kids. That's how they catch kids." They stared at him some more. They moved in cautiously, one on either side. They opened his blanket. They patted him all over. "What we're doing this for?" Piper wanted to know. "We're feeling for a gun," Russell exclaimed. "Oh." After the patting, they backed off. "So," said Russell, "you ain't a cop?" "Not me," said Maniac. He moved in from the doorway. And with only a moment's pause, the story came to him. "A pizza delivery boy. We have a contest every week, and you 2 were chosen for free pizza." The 2 gasped at each other. "We were?" "Yep, a large." "Where is it?" demanded Russell, glancing around. "At Cobble's Corner. You have 24 hours to claim your prize." He waited while they bickered over what to do. Valley Forge was a good 5 or 6 miles from 2 mills. These kids might not have made it to Mexico, but they had come a long way and stayed out overnight. And somewhere must be worried sick about them. And he had a feeling they weren't kidding about stealing the food. He figured he'd better help them make up their minds. "You know," he said, "you're taking the long way to Mexico. If you come back to 2 mills with me, I'll show you a shortcut." That did it. Soon the 3 of them were trekking past the Washington Memorial Chamber, Russell and Piper with their bags, Maniac with the satchel. It was early afternoon when they walked into Cobble's Corner at Hector and Birch. Maniac produced his certificate for conquering Cobble's Knot, and 20 minutes later, the young runaways were attacking a large pizza with pepperoni. Maniac confined himself to 3 glasses of water and half a dozen crimpets. The boys agreed with Maniac that they ought to stay the night in their own house before setting out for Mexico in the morning. They were barely a block from Cobble's when Maniac heard a familiar voice. Bellowing and barreling down the street was a fear and some fastballer, king of the Cobras, Big John McNabb himself, and he was roaring mad. Maniac might have taken off, but he found himself clung to and clutched by the 2 little urchins. They huddled behind him like babies on a possum's back. As Giant John came red-faced and huffing up to him, "Where you been?" he yelled. As Maniac considered what to say, the urchins peeped from behind him. "He wasn't no place, John. He was right here, with this kid here, and he ain't no cop either. We checked him out." For the first time, Giant John looked straight at Maniac. A smile crossed his face. Well, the frog man. The smile finished. "So what you doing with my little brother?"